fasten your seatbelt.
Just listen to this. This is a real piece of history here.
War einmal ein Bumerang, war ein weniges zu lang. Bumerang flog ein Stück, aber kam nicht mehr zurück. Publikum noch stundenlang wartete auf Bumerang. War einmal ein Bumerang, war ein weniges zu lang. Bumerang flog ein Stück, aber kam nicht mehr zurück. Publikum noch stundenlang wartete auf Bumerang.
If there is a person that is basically not a good person, but a person with bad character traits, if you don't make that person dimensional, then the fact that he has all that badness about him really doesn't mean anything. It only means something if you can identify that person as a real human being.
I always knew we lived in a very strange world. From a very young age, I always had a peculiar feeling that something is not quite right with this world, that nothing is as it seems, although I wouldn't be able to articulate it. It was just a feeling. Then, coming of age, for a very long time I followed clearly evident conspiracies in different fields, and was convinced that in high-level human affairs, conspiracies were the rule, not the exception. But I didn't know the half of it, not even close. Besides, I had a very strong intuition that there must be one overarching conspiracy, tying them all into an integrated system. But I could not, of course, piece together the puzzle of how it could all possibly work. I simply lacked vast amounts of data. Again, it was not very concrete, just a general feeling that those in power will do anything to stay in power. For many years, I have thought about the problem of evil in its many aspects. In 1989, in college, I took an elective course in the Religion and Philosophy department called Evil. Since that time, my long ponderings into this subject only deepened. During this course, I became familiar with the work of Carl Gustav Jung, and in another course the following semester, or the one after, called Integrating the Irrational, I became even more familiar with Jung's work and more of his concepts. Also around this time, I was introduced to Joseph Campbell's work. All of these events constituted a turning point in my life. Now, what I have learned so far from an enormous amount of research will follow. First, the value of critical thinking has been reinvigorated to an immense degree in the last few years. I would go as far as to say this value was redefined for me and taken to a whole new level because of a research network on the internet called Cassiopeia.org and Signs of the Times at the website sott.net. Second, I've developed a new appreciation for the power of networking with people interested in the same overall things and going in the same direction. The tremendous power in networking to put the pieces of the enormous and exceedingly complex puzzle together in this truly strange world in which we live cannot be overstated. Finally, the incredible number of the pieces of the puzzle that have fallen into place. But there are still quite a bit that will come together still. It is, after all, an ongoing process. The single most important part of the research done by the intrepid research team on the website called Signs of the Times and related sister sites and forums such as Cassiopeia is the studies of psychopathy and related pathological deviances, and the enormous efforts of this network of researchers to spread this understanding. Non-pathological humans have not been able to understand the Machiavellian world of politics because they do not have the data to objectively analyze and understand the crux of the matter, and instead tend to get fooled with professed ideologies. Ideologies, as we will discover, are a mask that pathological types hide behind to pursue their lust for power over the rest of the population, as to inflict the greatest amount of suffering upon that population that they consider not of their own species. Once one becomes even a little familiar with the study of psychopathy and related psychopathological deviances, many things really begin to fall into place as to how evil is propagated in human affairs in a very tangible way. The mountains of material that has accumulated on the Signs of the Times databases about the whole crucial understanding of the microsocial and macrosocial phenomena of psychopathologies and their effects on the non-pathological human population is invaluable if said population that does not carry psychopathologies is to have a fighting chance of protecting itself from this ever-present scourge. The book by clinical psychologist Andrew Lobachevsky, entitled Political Ponerology, A Science on the Nature of Evil, Adjusted for Political Purposes, literally enlightened us about one of the most perplexing repeating phenomena in human history: the perpetual dominance of a small minority of pathological deviants over the large majority of non-pathological population, leading to the colossal man-made devastation and destruction that have become legion down through human history. Political ponerology is a study of the founders and supporters of oppressive political regimes. Lobachevsky analyzes the common factors that lead to the propagation of man's inhumanity and cruelty to his fellow man. Conventional morality and humanist ideas cannot long withstand this predatory evil. Knowledge of its nature and its insidious and malicious effects on individuals and groups is the only hope for relief from this human manifestation of pure evil. The history of mankind analyzed objectively, without wishful thinking, is an epic horror show. Lobachevsky describes what he calls macrosocial evil, that is, large-scale evil that engulfs whole societies and nations, and has done so over and over again since time immemorial. Human history, objectively considered, truly is a horror. Ravening tribes sweeping across landscapes, invading, conquering, and destroying. Bloodbaths, plunder, and pillage have been almost uninterrupted events down through the millennia. Take the Catholic Inquisition. Before the more modern horrors of Nazi Germany and the Soviet bloc, the Inquisition was a typical regime of pathological horrors that non-pathological minds have a hard time imagining. How do such horrors engulf societies, nations, and even entire continents? What is the driving force behind this kind of macrosocial insanity? The study of the nature and behavior of psychopaths and related psychopathologies and their disproportionate influence compared to their numbers, especially when they gain positions of power, opens up the possibility to understand these phenomena in a whole new way. Psychopaths have a weapon against humanity that is lethally powerful. They look human and imitate human emotions, but their ultimate secret is that they utterly lack conscience. The power of this weapon lies in the fact that non-psychopathic people assume that all people have a conscience, and that they would be tormented by unbearable guilt and shame if they committed heinous acts against others. Nothing could be further from the truth. Psychopaths feel no such thing no matter what they have done. Another huge problem is that most people, if they think at all about psychopaths, think that all psychopaths are raving, violent serial killers, popularized in movies. While some psychopaths are extremely violent criminals that tend to end up in jail sometime in their lives, the destructive effects of such psychopaths, although horrible for those affected, are relatively limited. Imagine the psychopath who is born at an opportune time, has access to family fortune, is adept at hiding his true nature, and would not under most situations act openly in a violent way, and has a high level of skill for whipping up other people's hatred and sense of deprivation and injustice. Such a psychopath can arrange to kill large numbers of innocent, unsuspecting people. With access to enough resources, he could accomplish this large-scale murder from far away, sitting back and enjoying his secret plans. This is in fact what has happened repeatedly throughout history. It is time for people who collectively are victims of such psychopaths to realize a basic truth. If the less successful psychopath commits the kinds of heinous acts we occasionally hear about against, say, 10 people, the likelihood of eventually getting caught and being imprisoned is pretty high. These other types of psychopaths, the really successful ones, are a different story. These kill 10 million people if they can, and get streets, cities, and states named after themselves. Pathology among people in power can have utterly disastrous effects on all of the people under the control of such pathological individuals. Here are some excerpts from the book Political Panorology. Pathocracy is a disease of great social movements, followed by entire societies, nations, and empires. In the course of human history, it has affected social, political, and religious movements, as well as the accompanying ideologies, and turned them into caricatures of themselves. This occurred as a result of the participation of pathological agents in a pathodynamically similar process. That explains why all the pathocracies of the world are and have been so similar in their essential properties. The actions of pathocracy affect an entire society, starting with the leaders and infiltrating every town, business, and institution. The pathological social structure gradually covers the entire country, creating a new class within that nation. This privileged class of pathocrats feels permanently threatened by the others, i.e., by the majority of normal people. Neither do the pathocrats entertain any illusions about their personal fate, should there be a return to the system of normal men.